Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've ever felt like strategy is just this dry corporate exercise, buried in spreadsheets and endless, draining meetings, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, drawing from a really fascinating piece of source material that actually frames strategy as a conversation between two colleagues, Meera and Aarav, on a quiet terrace, we're going to completely reframe how you think about strategic management. We are going to transform it from a rigid checklist into a dynamic rhythm of choices, alignment, and most importantly, care.
So let's just jump right in and anchor our mindset with this profound little observation from our source text. Strategy is not a document, it's a rhythm. Just think about that for a second. So often, organizations will spend months building this massive strategy document, right? Only to literally leave it gathering dust on a shelf. But true strategy is a living, breathing pulse. It's the continuous way an organization's values meet its viability out in the real world. It's not static. It's constantly in motion.
Now, before we get too deep into the philosophy here, we do need to establish a quick baseline. Our source defines strategic management as the art and science of formulating, implementing, and evaluating decisions to achieve objectives. Notice the emphasis there on art and science. You definitely need the hard data of science, but you absolutely need that intuitive, human touch of art to truly make it work.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover strategy as a compass, the 3 levels of strategy, sensing the external landscape, mapping the internal landscape, and finally, strategy as stewardship.
All right, part 1, strategy as a compass, finding alignment and direction.
You see, the actual flow of strategic management follows a pretty exact sequential path, almost like a journey. You always start by defining your mission and vision. That's your true north. Then you scan your environment to see the terrain. Step 3, you formulate your strategy, figuring out exactly how to navigate that terrain. Step 4, you implement it. You actually start walking. And finally, step 5, you evaluate your outcomes. Did you actually end up where you meant to go?
But here is where things get really interesting. There is a massive paradigm shift happening right now. We are moving away from cold, mechanical actions to highly empathetic, human-centric mindsets. Traditional strategy relies on rigid planning and diagnosis, always chasing scale and managing logistics. But the compass approach? It reframes planning as presence. It reframes diagnosis as a dialogue. It elevates scale to stewardship and transforms logistics into genuine listening. This is the art of the art and science we talked about a minute ago.
Let's actually look at how this plays out in the real world with 3 quick micro-narratives. First, a cooperative dairy pivoted from bulk sales to branded retail. Now, they didn't just want to sell more. They redesigned packaging and created real feedback loops. It wasn't just scale, it was stewardship. Next, a publishing house expanded into audiobooks by partnering with voice artists. Again, it wasn't just market expansion, it was empathy for how people consume stories today. Finally, a school transitioned to hybrid learning, aligning their infrastructure and pedagogy. It wasn't just IT logistics, it was listening to the very real needs of their community.
Moving right along to part 2, the 3 levels of strategy: corporate, business, and functional alignment. So how do high-level goals actually cascade downward without falling apart? Let's use a solar startup as an example. Up at the very top, you have corporate strategy, which answers the big question, which businesses should we even be in? For this startup, their answer was focusing specifically on rural electrification. Then we step down to business strategy, answering how do we compete in that space? Their answer? Differentiate through deep community engagement. Finally, we hit functional strategy. How do the day-to-day departments actually support this? This is where HR, finance, and operations completely align to make that community engagement possible. Every single level speaks directly to the one above it.
Okay, part 3, sensing the external environment, looking beyond the organization.
I absolutely love this phrase from our source material. Analysis is not just scanning, it's sensing. Honestly, scanning sounds like a machine reading a barcode at the grocery store, right? It's completely passive. It's robotic data gathering. But sensing? Sensing is deeply human. It's an intuitive, active awareness of the market. It's feeling the shift in the wind long before the storm actually hits. And that brings us to a classic tool for sensing you might already know: PEST analysis. Let's look at how a food delivery service used these 4 specific lenses to safely navigate their expansion into Tier 2 cities. They didn't guess, they sensed. They looked at political factors, like navigating tricky local city regulations. They looked at economic factors, carefully assessing regional income levels so they could price things correctly. They sensed social factors by truly understanding local traditional eating habits. And finally, technological factors, evaluating whether the community actually had the smartphone tech access needed to even use their app in the first place.
Now, while PEST looks at the broad environment, Porter's 5 Forces zeroes in on direct competitive pressure. Our source gives this fantastic example of a local bakery using this to reposition itself defensively. They were getting hit from multiple sides. The threat of substitutes, like the massive rise in home baking, combined with intense industry rivalry from flashy new gourmet competitors. Throw in supplier power, meaning their ingredient prices were shooting up, and it is painfully obvious why this bakery needed a clear map of these forces to survive and carve out a safe, profitable niche.
Which brings us to part 4, mapping the internal landscape, turning the lens inward.
So we've looked out, now we look in. A classic SWOT analysis is brilliant for this. Take a local cooperative preparing for a digital transformation. They identified their core strength right away, deep community trust. But they were brutally honest about their weakness, incredibly low tech literacy among their staff. They saw an external opportunity in the huge rise of digital payments, but a glaring threat from encroaching private competitors. By mapping these 4 elements, their strategy essentially writes itself, right? Leverage community trust while urgently training staff on digital payments to block those private competitors. And that leads to this totally profound, short little observation about that cooperative SWOT analysis. It wasn't just a mirror, it was a map. I mean, think about it. A mirror just shows you what you look like today, your current flaws and your assets. But an effective internal analysis shouldn't just reflect the present. It should actively dictate the exact path you take tomorrow. It actually points the way forward.
But to find the actual roadblocks on that path forward, you've got to trace how you literally create value. A textile unit mentioned in the text utilized this value chain analysis to do just that. They broke down their entire process from inbound logistics to operations to marketing to service. By doing this, they uncovered hidden delays in their dyeing operations and massive, glaring gaps in their post-sales feedback loop. Once they mapped out these steps, they successfully fixed the bottlenecks, which led directly to faster delivery and much better product quality.
Finally, we arrive at part 5, strategy as stewardship, the art of care and dialogue.
These parallel insights really just summarize our entire journey today. Strategy is not just choice, it's care. And analysis is not just diagnosis, it's dialogue. It is so incredibly easy to get lost in the frameworks, the SWOTs, the PESTs, the value chains, and just completely forget that every single matrix and flowchart is ultimately about human connection. It's about intentional stewardship of your resources, your employees, and your community. If you aren't leading with care, and if you aren't having a real dialogue with your market, you honestly aren't doing strategy at all.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with a few final provocative questions from the text to turn that strategic compass directly onto your own leadership. What kind of strategist are you? How do you listen before you lead? What unseen pressures are shaping your choices today? And ultimately, what true value do you create and how? Take these questions, carry them with you, and start building your own strategic rhythm. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.